To borrow a quote from our favourite journo, David Emmett, they're scared shitless for next year. Welcome back to Motor the Sport. I'm going to do it again. I'll have to keep that in.
Look at this. Look at this. It's perfect.
Amongst all the bozo genes, all of the knockwappy, we will send on to them only you, Marc Marquez.
Welcome back to Motorsport 101. Fast forward to the end if you want to hear me watch an intro, because I do it every once in a while and it's never a dull time. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 550. 550 of Motorsport 101. It's like a Ferrari's on my poster again as a child. Good times. Welcome to our MotoGP half of our doubleheader podcast recording. And sorry this one came out a little bit late, folks. I was planning to get this out a little earlier, but unfortunately Riverside had some rare technical problems. Reason being, everybody's flooded to download the Mac app because Riverside is now available on Mac directly as a download rather than using an internet
We're in
browser.
a post-Chrome world, baby.
Yep, we have evolved beyond the need for Google Chrome, and that apparently has led to a new exciting app add-in world, and apparently Riverside can barely take it. So we'll have to hope and see that this holds up in one piece. So apologies for the delay on that, folks. If you're hearing this on Patreon, it's for all backers at this one because it's only fair to try and pay it forward as we do on this show. But yes, we are talking about the MotoGP Australian Grand Prix of 2024. In our opinion, probably the blue ribbon event of bike racing across the year, at least on prototype machinery anyway. We love Suzuka. But beyond that, it doesn't get much better than MotoGP in Australia. And once again, Phillip Island has delivered another classic. But not in the way you might have expected. Sitting down with me to break it down for the next 45 minutes or so is Mr. Cameron Buckley. How's it going, Cam?
It's going great. It's going great. You know what? It's going to go even better next year for me. I'm quite convinced of that at this point. I just can't stop marveling at this race time.
It is ridiculous.
We'll get into why later. There was a solid 24-hour grace period where none of us could really believe it.
Yeah, startling. Some of the numbers that came out of this race was outrageous, and you'll see why very shortly. Also joining me, and it's quite weird seeing a Braves fan in a Dodgers cap, speaking as a guy that's also got a Braves jersey in his wardrobe. It's RJ O'Connell. How's it going?
I see. Remember that wager we put in 2020? I never gave that away.
No, you didn't, did you?
And I just kept it around because it's like, it looks nice. I spent a lot of money on it at the time. Why not bring this Los Angeles Dodgers cap with me? To the point where in a situation where I would need to bandwagon the Los Angeles Dodgers for the World Series, well, this cap has now come to serve me. I sure
Sorry, RJ. I don't need a bandwagon shit right now.
Oh, as he pulls.
Let us put on his Celtics champion hat from last year.
Can I just say, in regards to the New York Knicks, I'm not sorry.
Opening night was not good for the New York Knicks. It was very good for the Boston Celtics, who set the team record for most threes made in a game.
No, they only tied it. All that proves is that nobody puts up 30 threes on the Knicks.
No.
We put up 29.
Close enough, right? Close enough, yes. RJ is bandwagoning the Dodgers for the next week and a half or so in the hopes of bringing home a World Series to Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto.
Freeman.
And Freddie Freeman. We all love Freddie. We all love Freddie.
I think much more importantly, it's about a World Series not going to the New York Yankees.
Sorry, King. Please send all complaints on this matter to jim@gizmodo.com. Damn, I didn't expect that to pop the crowd so much. We're not here to talk about
our own intra-server sports rivalries. No, instead we're here to talk about on-track biking sporting rivalries. And there is no greater stage than Phillip Island. for my money, the best motorcycle racing track in the world. So after this break, after Dre introduces where you can find us, we will speak of this glorious day.
Indeed. Places you can find us real quick. We're on youtube.com/motorsport101 or on facebook.com/motorsport101. You can also follow us on Elon Musk's sued and failed business investment at motorsport_101.
How little that narrows it down?
Oh, there's several. At Dre Harrison 101, at RJ O'Connor, at C Buckley 917. If you want to follow our personal handles, you can do so there as well. We're also on Instagram, Motorsport 101 Pod, our website, motorsport101.com. If you want my full written thoughts on both this race and Formula One's time penalty scene around the world in Austin, you can read that if you haven't already. Don't forget to wear a bib as you enjoy. And of course, if you really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon. Patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our content. You can also upgrade to the $10 tier, and you can get access to the supporters club of our Discord server, where you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded, as Kira is doing so right now in our studio. Thank you very much, Kira, for the continued support as ever. Thank you very much. After this quick musical interlude, we'll talk about MotoGP's 2024 Australian Grand Prix.
But before we get into that, Dre, I need to read you something.
Go on.
This is from October 19th, 2024 at 10:22 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time to your brand new Blue Sky account, because we are all creating life drafts just in case of aforementioned business investment, where you said, quote, "The all-nighter for a 4 a.m. British Standard Time MotoGP race is not the one, TBH, Chief." Well, I'd say you are happy to be proven wrong, because Phillip Island produced another classic MotoGP race as the big three hitters of the sport went at it. Francesco Bagnaia tried early on to stay with the leaders, but he quickly fell away, leaving Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez to fight on, the latter having been bogged down to 13th off the line after a tear-off got stuck on his rear tire. And to quote the great racing legend Oliver Gavin, "I do love me a good tear-off." But Marquez didn't. But it didn't matter, because Marquez stayed on Martin until the final 4 laps, where back and forth ensued, and Marquez taking a big dive at the Miller hairpin to lead and then go on to win by just under a second. Fellas, what'd you make of that crazy race?
It wouldn't be a Marc Marquez race without something spectacular happening, because as you said many a time on this show, RJ, Marc Marquez can only be great.
He said it himself after the race. It's always something.
It's always something. And if you haven't seen, you had to have seen the footage of this by now, where he had a bug stuck on his front tear off on his helmet as he was coming up to the line. He tears it off and it goes underneath the bike. It ends up in his rear tire. He tries to dislocate his foot.
He reaches down and a gust of wind sticks it on his rear tire. God said, "No, you made your bed. Now you can lay in it."
Yeah. And then next thing you know, he has a start that would have put Francesco Bagnaia's at Aragon to shame. And by turn 1 entering the braking zone, he's 13th on the track. Now, he got a little bit lucky here. That's like Moses parting the Red Sea. A few bikes went off the road, like Alex Marquez, and shoving Brad Binder to one side, and the inside lane at the Melbourne Loop opening up. And next thing you know, Marquez is 6th by the Miller hairpin, because he's got past the Bastianini on the opening lap, just to quickly surge through the field. And yeah, he's in the lead group by lap 4. And as we mentioned, Pecco Bagnaia just did not have it this weekend. He did not enjoy the setup of his GP24. He wasn't able to brake with the confidence he normally does. That's where a lot of his speed comes from. And, well, he had one crack at it. He had one crack at Martin, because Martin Elion did make a small mistake at the Melbourne Loop. He almost tucked the front. Bagnaia took one go at it into the Miller hairpin, because comes through after Stoner corner, and couldn't quite get it done, and it opened the door for Marquez to pass him. And after that was it. It was Martin versus Marquez the rest of the way.
It was single ritual combat between the two fastest men on the planet. And I mean, these two threw 4/10 a lap on Pecco for the remainder of the race. The sheer speed on display from those two was something. It's something we probably should have seen last year, but Martin botched the tire call. Before we even get to the duel, the pace of this race was off the charts.
Yeah, tell me about this. You teased it.
It was 51.4 seconds faster than last year's race time on the same motorcycle.
That's astonishing. That's 1.9 It's 1.9 seconds a lap faster than last year's race. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a couple of mitigating factors here. This track did just get resurfaced. This was the first time they were running on a newly resurfaced Phillip Island, which gave them a bit more grip to play with. And yeah, like maybe Johan Zarco wasn't on the most optimal of race strategies, given that Jorge Martin was leading 99% of that race. But even with that in hand, to go nearly 2 seconds a lap quicker on a previous year's race on the same machinery is insane. And on top of that, there was a couple of, like, Phillip Island had the oldest lap record in the book. And when it came to the MotoGP circuit records, that record was set in 2013 by Marquez.
Resurface.
I remember that race well. I was watching it at a bachelor party thinking, oh my gosh, what is happening here?
That was the diamond cutter resurfacing on the track. That was the MotoGP thinks that Bridgestone says we can't guarantee the safety of the tires beyond 10 laps race, where Marquez gets disqualified for running 11 laps on a tire, which
the championship back open back in 2013.
It nearly cost him his first championship because someone at Honda forgot to count to 10. It's kind of weird how these things turn out.
All that money can't count to 10, but these two, I mean, 12 laps straight of no holds barred, dog eat dog world, and my teeth are bigger than yours kind of fighting, where Marquez is stupid fast through Melbourne Loop, stupid fast through Stoner Corner, doing the stoner through Stoner Corner, and through the final, he just can't quite get around him. And Martin is faster in other parts of the track, and they're never really more than half a second apart.
It was 0.2 to 3 most of the way, which is rare for this era.
Just how much speed that Marc could carry through the left-handers. At the same time, Pecco cannot live with this. He is dropped, reeling behind the pace of these two. And then the pass. Martin goes wide, and Marc just slammed it up the inside.
We were all watching it together, and I think we missed the pass because
we missed the repass.
The wrong moment. We
saw the initial pass. Comes back down the main straight. The GP24 in a rage down the main straight. Martin gets back around him because of the top end on this year's Ducati. So Marc initiates the Max Verstappen block pass.
Yeah, gets him again at the Miller corner, and this time there was no coming back from that. It was wild. The first pass came off the exit of the Miller hairpin because Marquez was just so much better on exit compared to Martin was. Martin was spinning his rear wheel up, and Marquez was able to get in there. Like I said, like Cam said, Martin immediately counter-attack down the main straight because these GP24s are fast. I mean, I did a look at the speedos after the race was over, and Enea Bastianini topped out at 355 kilometers an hour, 222 in King's English, 222 miles an hour, which is just insane. And that's nowhere near the top end we've seen on these bikes and other places this year, which is wild. But anyway, point is that, again, Marquez comes back at the Miller corner. It's a classic block pass. No contact was made. Martin, thankfully, did see it coming. But Martin couldn't respond and then inevitably settles for second. He did the smart thing. He took the 20 points and got the hell up out of here. By now it was 9 seconds down the road by now.
He was left unable to fight with them. Marquez set a 1:27 in race trim.
A 1:27.7, only half a second off the all-time lap record, and a time that would have put him on the front row of the grid.
They were running 28 flats as a race pace.
Yeah, Marquez. I looked at the lap time chart at the end of the race. Marquez went 28.6, including the race winning overtake, and then 28.0, 28.0 to close it out.
28 flats as a race pace around Phillip Island. It's inconceivably transcendently great.
Yeah.
All this from 13th in the opening corner.
All that from 13th on the grid. That pace was on 26 lap old tyres, and it's exactly what we all thought the upside of what Marc Marquez's Ducati return was going to be. This was sheer, overwhelming, brute force pace. That, look, you've beaten arguably the fastest bike rider in the world right now in Jorge Martin in a straight-up dogfight where speed was the only thing that mattered around the fastest MotoGP track we go around in arguably the fastest race we've ever seen in this sport in modern times.
On a bike that is following its flywheel upgrade and even 0.3 a lap off the speed.
It's astonishing. It's one of Marquez's greatest wins, in my opinion. He had absolutely no business winning this race. He should have taken an easy third and taken his board and gone home. He's defeated. It's like that time Ishiro hits a home run off Mariano Rivera as a walk-off. He's when the court says he just defeated Mariano Rivera. That's what Marc Marquez has just done.
Single ritual combat, and he took his heart.
Yeah. Against the fastest rider in the world and beat him at his own game, which is just wild to me because we all know Jorge Martin is fast as shit.
He's field club the field in qualifying.
Yeah, he was half a second faster than the field in qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a big problem next year, and I mean, it's a good enough weekend for Martin because he's punched his lead out to another. He's on 20 points up on Pecco right now.
Yeah, because he won the sprint as well as finishing second in the Grand Prix. So he only dropped 5 points the whole weekend. Bagnaia was off the podium he was fourth in the sprint and then third in the Grand Prix. So he's pushed the gap back out to 20 points. With only 3 rounds to go now. Dare I say it, Jorge Martin's back in the driver's seat for this championship now?
So, you hear that in the distance? The bozo wafts through the trees.
But on that point, I know that is between Jorge Martin and Francesco Bagnaia. I know Marc Marquez has had his problems with qualifying. I know he has overridden this bike at times. But don't you ever put him in the same bozo gene bracket as those other two bozos.
Well, in fairness, in that regard, Marc Marquez did bozo away multiple years of his career.
He did. There's no getting around. There's no getting around that. But we know why he did, because for Marc Marquez, he can only be great. Because let's not forget that race he broke his arm. He went from the back of the field to second in half a race.
Yeah, on a hunk of garbage.
I'm just saying. There's levels to this.
There is levels to this. Yeah. I mean, talk around the paddock. Everyone is scared out of their minds in 2025.
Yeah. It's one of those confirmations of what a lot of people in the paddock already knew. That with Marc Marquez is on up-to-date machinery, everybody needs to be on notice. And everybody has said that from day one. It's like, it's weird.
No.
You know what's the weird thing about this season in that sense, Cam? It's that everybody else has been gassing up Marquez this year and thinking he could have had a title fight even though he was on last year's machinery. The most modest man about this has been Marc himself.
Yeah, and he has been very honest. I mean, he's not had the year that I thought he was going to, but at the same time, it's been in some ways better, in some ways worse. I don't think any of us could have predicted just how big the step was going to be from the 23 to the 24 Decimus Adichie. And that, this is the races. That's how it goes sometimes. But to do that on that bike to Jorge Martin, who we know is straddling on that line of he can only be great. He can only be either the fastest rider on the planet or throwing the bike up the road into the gravel. In this race, it was sheer punishing speed. He got beat at his own game.
Yeah, it's wild.
But by the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of at the point now. Pecco needs to start winning races. There's no way around that.
If Jorge Martin wins at Thailand this weekend, and he's got every chance of doing so, I mean, we're recording
We've seen him around there before.
He won here last year in a straight dog fight with Brad Binder and Pecco Bagnaia. We're recording this on Friday night, having seen practice. Jorge Martin's race pace looks astonishingly good.
Who was fastest by the end of today?
Marquez, funnily enough, with a new lap
record. How that works. In practice. We're setting lap records in practice, man. We're talking about practice.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, if Jorge, I would say Martin's probably the favourite for Thailand so far this weekend as well. And if he is, and he wins that, he'll have a Grand Prix in hand with 2 to play. This is the most important round of Jorge Martin's championship, maybe of his entire career this weekend. If he can win this one and can give himself a Grand Prix worth of clearance, he has a match point at Sepang next week.
Yeah, and then it's out of Pecco could run the field over for the remainder of the year. It's out of his hands.
For Bagnaia, all of a sudden, Thailand is must win. I would say it's must win at this point.
The bozo gene boils just beneath the surface, ready to strike.
As Kira says in our chat, the fact you've said this terrifies me for his bozo gene now. I don't know. I think Martin's looked a lot more confident in the last few races. I like what he's doing on the bike right now. But I've said this before, and just when you think he's in the clear...
He's proven you incredible. He's made you eat those words.
Multiple times over. Yes, I'm well aware.
But I mean, at the same time, like, he doesn't need to go all out either.
No, he doesn't.
Because at the same time, with Marc involved, and it's very funny that the same just whiny idiots from 2015 are getting involved. Well, it's funny. He affected both title runners by beating both of their asses in Phillip Island.
Exactly. It is 2015 all over again.
Who would have thought Marc Marquez likes to win? He's only done it, 88 times?
Yeah, he's now only 2 wins off the great Angel Nieto for 3rd all time when it comes to overall career wins, and I think he's now 3rd all time on the MotoGP Premier Class wins. I think he's only 6 behind Agostini, which is just...
He was pretty good at this whole 2-wheeled motorcycle thing.
Can I remind everybody, he's the man who lost several years of his prime due to a forearm injury.
He lost 3 years of his prime.
Yeah.
4 years, actually, I'd argue.
And it's starting to slowly morph into a situation where, like, the undertones of 18 and 19 are starting to come back to the surface because, man, with what we know from the offset of pace between 23 and 24, the way he's given these two the work, ooh.
Yeah, he is the Lionel Messi of this sport. I don't care what anyone says to me. And if you want to know how the man's feeling, my former friends at the race put a great quote from Marquez in his post-Friday debrief with the media that sums it up quite well, because he still has a lot of love and appreciation for Honda. But he said this, quote, "I already achieved what I want. The target was to prolong my career and feel competitive again. If I will win another title, this will be something extra. But my main goal is already done. He's proving to himself he can ride at the very highest level again. Yeah. He has nothing left to prove to anybody. That's a scary thought for anybody else involved."
Marc Marquez with self-confidence and the confidence to go and make that decision is bad news for everyone else. Oh, yeah. What I will also say, you two on the GP24s, Bozo and Bozo Light, I suggest you win this title.
Yes.
Because I don't know when you're going to get a shot at another one, especially for the guy going to Aprilia, who had another very anonymous weekend.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, this was all very good. I'm glad we were all very excited about this Marc Marquez win. We're excited about that battle to finish. Now let's go turn the opposite direction and just completely lay into the sport, because we had
What's that over the horizon? God, it's not happy.
It's beehive time. Pretty gnarly crash in the sprint race.
Yeah.
Marco Bezzecchi is trailing Maverick Vinales. Bezzecchi gets caught in the turbulence. The aero wake crashes into Vinales at 180 miles per hour. Thankfully, both riders were okay. But strangely enough, the stewards looked at this and said that Marco Bezzecchi was at fault and hit him with a long lap penalty in the feature race. Deemed him responsible for the incident, despite the stewards acknowledging that the aero wash-off Vinales' bike was a mitigating factor. So in other words, they looked at it and they determined that there were mitigating circumstances that would have turned this from a very harsh penalty to an insanely harsh penalty. Gentlemen, what's going on here?
You know, it's kind of amazing if you think about it. With all that happened in the Formula One weekend with that penalty, that wasn't even the worst one on the weekend. Not even close.
Not even close.
What is Freddie Spencer smoking?
It's utterly terrifying, because to add a little bit more nuance to what RJ was saying, if you read the steward's report on this incident, he implies that they were going to hit Bez with a double long lap penalty as a result of this crash, and then said that the mitigating factor of the potentially of being caught in the aero wash knocked it down to just one long lap rather than two. So
we were going to throw you in prison for life, but instead we'll just give you 25 years.
To which I say, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, the terrifying thing about this, and David Emmett summed it up, and he had the exact same thought that I did at motomatters.com, where he said, this is an acknowledgement and an acceptance that these bikes are dangerous. That's a confession. You've openly admitted that these bikes are now have caused a dangerous scenario which is beyond the rider's control. You've acknowledged and accepted that, and then you've still hit Bez with a penalty anyway. I find this deeply concerning from a stewarding standpoint, that Freddie Spencer has seen all the evidence and he's decided that that was directly Bez's fault. Like, for the record, it's a racing incident. There is no one to blame. Maverick Vinales has passed because Bez was on softer tires. He already burned through him. Maverick is already ahead of him by a full bike length by the time they get to the braking zone for doing the opening corner. Maverick sweeps across to take his normal braking line for that corner, which he's perfectly entitled to do. Mm-hmm. And Bez gets caught in the aero wash as he's trying to brake. It's not the first time Bez has been caught like this, because I remember Silverstone last year where he was in that race and got caught in Bagnaia's aero wash. And, well, if you don't know what happens when an aero wash sweeps up underneath you and under braking, it locks your front brake. At that point, you've got two decisions. Either one, you roll off the brake and hope to God that there's a decent runoff in front of you. Or you try to take the corner, you're almost guaranteed to tuck the front and you're going to crash.
Or what's worse, even in this case, is when he caught it, it locked the front and it pitched him sideways and sat him down and just collected him at just a touch north. There was about 150 when they hit each other.
It very much reads like if it was me riding that bike, I simply wouldn't have crashed in the bike in front of me kind of deal.
Dre is right. This is an acknowledgement that these aero device, ride height device bikes are inherently dangerous beyond the standard dangers of motorcycle racing. We all know this is dangerous as shit. You're on a 300 horsepower carbon fiber missile going down into a corner with basically nothing but grass runoff. But I cannot get there. I can't even fathom how you could name Bez predominantly responsible for the incident. He gets in the dirty air. His front brake is effectively useless at that point. It's the nature of these motorcycles.
We've seen it countless times. And even if you want to...
Nakagami at Spain a couple years ago wiped out 5 bikes.
Yeah,
situation.
He head-butted the rear end of Francesco Bagnaia's bike. He took out Alex Rins. He broke Alex Rins' wrist as a result of that incident. And may I remind you that Taka Nakagami faced no disciplinary action for causing that Turn 1 wreck? None. It happened to Enea Bastianini last year at Catalunya. He wiped out almost every other Ducati in play at that first corner last year, and he got a long lap penalty for missing his braking zone and getting caught in another bike's wash as they headed towards turn one. Even if you want to be ultra pedantic and say that, okay, you've blamed Bez and deemed him responsible, at least if you were doing this consistently, I'd be a little bit more understandable. But we have the proof to suggest that Freddie Spencer has not adjudicated these incidents fairly. Because even if you want to say it's not a bullshit penalty, which I think it is, it's inconsistent too. It's the worst of both worlds. It's a horrible call, and it's proof you've given this horrible call out before, which I'd argue is even worse.
It's more proof that this is a series that is not equipped to regulate and govern an aero-driven form of motorsport. Because, I mean, we've seen this in Formula. Remember when the Red Bulls hit each other in Baku? God, was it 2018?
I think so, yeah.
And it was exactly this. Verstappen crosses over Ricciardo in the braking zone. You can see on Ricciardo's onboard how violently his front wing is fluttering in the dirty air behind the wide tire, wide wing F1 cars. And he lost his front tires and he crashes into the back of them.
Right.
I call that a racing incident, because it's a racing incident. This sport is not equipped to govern, not equipped to regulate aerodynamics. And I've been saying this for years. I've been saying this since the rear tire scoop appeared at the end of the 2010s. They don't know how to regulate this. And if you are admitting that this is unsafe beyond the standard means of motorcycle racing, isn't that the grounds to ban all this shit? We can't get rid of these fast enough.
It should be. We should have gotten rid of this shit 2 years ago. And we're still, it frustrates me that we still have to keep having this conversation, because it keeps coming up again and again and again that this sport is not equipped to have high downforce packages on these prototype motorcycles. And this is the one Grand Prix a year where you're allowed to take the wings off. We saw it with Raul Fernandez in the Grand Prix itself. Aprilia, as an experiment, took all the wings off the bike. You're not allowed to do that normally, but for Phillip Island, you are, as an exemption because of the high wings that the island can often generate. And he finished,
which is another admittance.
Yeah,
that's another admittance that these can be unsafe. You get a crosswind on a wing-equipped motorcycle, it can pitch you sideways.
Yeah, and like you're entering that braking zone on an average run of 210 miles an hour, as much as 220 in some cases. This is extremely dangerous. Like, it is startling that Bez was able to walk away from this under his own power, as did Maverick, because he got absolutely pitched through no fault of his own either. Both of them were able to walk away from this. We can't keep getting, like, mathematically speaking, we will not keep getting away with this.
No,
that was a 180 mile an hour incident.
That's incredibly the most injured member out of all of this were people who got clipped in the debris field.
Lorenzo Savadori had to pull out of the race halfway through because he actually got
clipped his arm.
Yeah, in fact, he actually got hit by Bez's mudguard as he was coming through into the braking zone himself about 5 seconds later, because of how massive the impact was.
JC Antonio got caught in the debris field as well.
Indeed.
If you're going to have these high downforce prototypes, you need to be capable of regulating them. You need to be capable of understanding what they're doing to your sport. And I don't think MotoGP understands. I don't think they want to, because it's been years and that it feels like they've made very little effort to do so. It's not good enough.
No, it's substandard for a world championship, for the second biggest
the pinnacle of motorcycle racing.
The biggest two-wheeled series in the world, the second biggest motorsport series in the world, period. This is completely unacceptable. This is unacceptable governance, and it's unacceptable that you've let this carry on for so many years with a lack of regulation in regards to governing the sport in this way, and the fact that there is a mountain of proof that these aero packages are dangerous and they're leading to manufacturers taking bigger and bigger risks to try and maximize their performance. and we're still having this conversation 2 years later that Ducati doesn't want to take their toys and go home. 2027 cannot come soon enough, but we should be banning this shit today. I don't care what anyone says to me. People,
it's a long 3 years to wait. Two and a half at this point.
And we shouldn't have to wait this long. It's fucking ridiculous. It needs to stop today, and before someone gets seriously hurt. We've dodged too many bullets on this already, as it is. Quite frankly, one of these days there will be a bullet in the chamber, and someone is going to be either very, very seriously hurt or worse. And I don't want to be there covering the sport there when that happens. And I say when, because it will if this keeps up. It's a miracle we haven't had a big one yet already. Like, Bagnaia had the luckiest escape on planet Earth. Nakagami's one could have been so much worse in 2022 than how it actually ended up in the end. He headbutted a fucking tyre in the middle of a braking zone and walked away. We've been so goddamn fortunate. I cannot speak enough that how lucky the sport has been. This was another one where not only was that incident avoidable by the regulations of the sport, but also it has been mismanaged by people we're supposed to trust. To which I say, good luck next year, Simon Crafar, because I know you're a very well-liked and a very well-popular man in MotoGP's paddock. Good luck trying to regulate this shit, because Freddie Spencer has proven he cannot.
Good luck. Good luck making that goodwill last. I cannot imagine that goodwill lasting more than his first season on the job.
Yeah. Good luck to him. I mean,
yeah, shorter.
Well, yeah, good luck to him.
I'm kind of looking at it going forward as when I see them regulate this sport on a sporting and technical level in accordance to what it's become, I'll let them know.
What do they see as the benefit of all this other than just like, look what we can do in terms of design and engineering?
Well, it's they're engineering to win. The problem, and that's where it begins and ends. It's the same with Formula One with the.
I'm not talking about from the constructor perspective. I'm talking about what do the promoters see as the benefit to this, other than just like, hey, look at how advanced our bikes are.
They haven't put the work in.
Yeah,
they have not put the work in. This was a problem 5 years ago when I believe it was Ducati showed up with an aero device on their swing arm, referring to it as an aero device. It got kicked out at scrutineering. They then took the exact same device, listed it as a tire cooling device, and the stewards let it in, even though it was exactly the same. This is a sport that does not understand aerodynamics, and the constructors have brought aerodynamics in.
You could go further back than that, going back to the Ducati GP16 with Lorenzo and the hammerhead fin design that became so memeable. Like, the sport opened Pandora's box with aerodynamics almost a year ago, and it now cannot put that genie back in the bottle again. We've gone too far. That's
aerodynamics. Like, at the end of the day, that's the team trying. That's a team trying to win. That's looking into the regulations and going, here's a hole here. How do we then take advantage of it? I'm talking about the stewards looking at the exact same device that just went through their tent an hour prior with a different word to describe it, looking at the same device and saying, okay, that's kosher.
Like, the scrutineers must have thought, God, we've been made to look like complete fucking idiots, because they had to admit it was the same part. And they're like, well, under the rules, we can't ban it. So what do we do now? Well, we've got to let it go. And again, Ducati now hold all the aces, because even if we wanted to get rid of all of these devices, like shapeshifters, fucking ride height devices, and you know, the aero that we have, it would have to come from a unanimous decision from all five manufacturers that are in this sport right now. And Ducati, who invented these devices, who have been the originators of them, of the sport playing catch up for the last half decade, they're not going to take their toys and go home. They're winning. They dominate motorcycle racing.
Dominant motorcycle of the modern age. The turkey isn't going to vote for the oven, as you quite eloquently put.
Merry Christmas.
It is time to start taking away voting rights from these turkeys. I am a pro voting rights person all the time.
The damn turkeys.
Goddamn right. Dre, we got to sit. Sorry.
Yeah, go, Mojo.
Yeah, because we got 6 different news items. I mean, we could be talking about this all day, but we got 6 different news items. Pick one you want to go with first.
Let's do some cleanup first and foremost. I mean, people were very heated about the Manuel Gonzalez story coming out of Japan and pissing off their Chinese sponsor, in their title sponsor AQ Motor, in regards to wearing the Japanese headband at that race weekend. Well, apparently Gresini has begged for forgiveness, and it looks like it's been given to them. But as a peace offering, they are not running the AQ Motor sponsorship on their website or on their bike for the rest of the season. Manuel Gonzalez has kept his job, and I'm glad that he's been able to keep his job. What he did was not worthy of a fireable offence, in my opinion. So I'm glad at least that Manuel Gonzalez still gets to ride his bike, but I hope it's a very big lesson learned for Gresini in terms of their just how fucking lackadaisical at best they are in terms of respecting other people's cultures, because it's the second time they've done that this year, and I find it remarkable that they've gotten away with it again, quite frankly. They're very,
what do you make about the whataboutism from the other side of it? It's just like, oh, well, look at what the People's Republic of China does to its own people about all this. Like, yes, that's all fucked up, but so is this.
Yeah, like
I think it's to be fucked up.
What people don't seem to want to understand about this is that when, yes, no one is saying that China hasn't committed human rights issues of their own, and no one is saying that China is above criticism in regards to how their stance amongst the world. However, you accepted Chinese money. You accepted them to be your title sponsor. And the moment you sign the dotted line, you play by their rules if you want their funding. And you did not respect them. So you're going to have to pay the penalty. Tough. Get over it. If that's a concern to you, don't take their money. It really is as simple as that. You can want about it all you want if it makes you feel better about it, but at the end of the day, that's just the reality of their situation. I get it. Moto2 teams are not exactly swimming with money. I know it's a series that loses money as a whole. They had to be bailed out by Dorna when the pandemic landed, but if you're going to ride the Chinese money bandwagon, this is the cost that it comes with. Tough.
Yeah. What do you make about this recent development for the factory Honda team? Because as it turns out,
what about it?
They're not going to just slap on their own internal lubricant brand. Apparently, the rumor is they're going to get something bigger, flashier, shinier as a sponsor.
Do you have any idea how much me, as a Castrol Mugen NSX worshiper, how much it's going to hurt seeing a Castrol Honda, multiple Castrol Hondas, because we have one already, running in 17th next year?
Yep, that's the leading rumor.
It's going to be so pretty, and it's going to hurt so bad.
This is going to end a 30-year partnership between Repsol and Honda, although... for those of you maybe looking on early access, 43-year partnership between Morelli and Team Impel and Super GT is going to end after this season. I'm not.
No.
Either,
Call it what it is. Calsonic and Team Impel.
You're fucking right. That's why I'm never giving up this jacket. But yes, Castrol, rumored to be new title sponsor.
That's now a historic racing jacket.
I'm glad that at least Honda's got something, and Castrol is an iconic brand in its own right. I'm glad it's a decent consolation prize for Honda, because I mean, losing a key title sponsor like Repsol, an iconic part of their racing identity and brand, is huge. I'm glad it's something, but let's not pretend that this isn't papering over the cracks. It's a band-aid on a gaping head wound.
On a severed head, more likely. I mean, this weekend it was really good for like 5 minutes, and then it wasn't.
Well,
Johan Zarco was doing the Lord's work on that hunk of garbage.
Still, it could be worse. Did you read the financial reports coming out of KTM?
Yeah. KTM's parent company is in a really, really bad spot financially.
To put it into perspective, if anyone knows the story of the collapse of Nortel Networks, this feels very similar. For those who, because you gotta remember that the quick summarize, and I highly recommend the two-parter that Bobby Broccoli did on this earlier this year. He's a fantastic YouTuber that summed this up beautifully in over 2.5 hours. But essentially, Nortel was the late bandwagoners to fiber optics from their background in telecoms. And what happened was the dot-com bubble burst, and this was a company that was using huge amounts of stocks and owning a huge amount of stocks in order to buy out all their rivals and try and become this telecoms super giant company. And then when the bubble burst, it turns out they weren't making a profit for 4 years and they collapsed. Well, in KTM's case, it's a similar deal where Nortel gave the game away and said, we're actually going to make a net loss. Same thing happened at KTM this year when they announced their financial results and said, we are actually not going to hit our financial targets. Their stock price went down by 85%.
Yeah, in fact, if you're wondering how this is affecting their motorsport program, the rumor is that it already has, because their intended return to World Supersport has been canned already.
Yeah, they were building a 900cc Supersport bike to take on that return to the category for next year. It's dead.
Speaking of 900cc KTMs, close enough. You hear about the massive recall going with all of their 890cc bikes for crankshaft failure?
Oh yeah. Like so, when let's make it this way. Matt Oxley spoke very harshly over a Motorsport magazine about KTM's treatment of him because he was denied the ability to talk to their engineers, because Matt does a normal end of season engineering wrap up. So he talks to technical heads and talks about their season, their development and all of that. KTM denied him an interview with any of their technical or engineering heads, almost out of pettiness because of being critical of their performances this season. And apparently he got a flood of angry tweets from fellow KTM owners who talked shit about the company, their service, their products, their recalls, all in the space of a matter of weeks. It's not going well if you're a KTM fan out now. It's shit's rough out here.
Yeah, because I mean, they're in a slump of motorcycle sales. They're in a slump of bicycle sales because their parent company also sells bicycles. Major recall on KTMs and stock price being clipped by 85%. Does any of this sound good?
No. I'd argue. Does
any of this sound like a company that, up to this point, has had a blank check to basically spend and experiment as much as possible in MotoGP? Does that sound sustainable while this is going on?
No, it doesn't. Because it feels like when you lay it out like this, and I might be tripping, but like, didn't Suzuki leave over less than this?
Yeah,
Suzuki's emission scandal was not small, but this ain't good either.
Yeah, this ain't good.
And I need to point out here, we're coming up on the most important year of KTM's racing history next year. This is going to be the fully decked out. We have a super team, a fleet of 4 riders next year across their factory and customer tech-free teams, which, by the way, is going to be a lot more KTM-branded sponsorship for next year as opposed to their own. Go on, Cam.
And since one owner of Red Bull passed away, they've also lost money from Red Bull because they haven't been investing as much in motorcycle racing on 2 wheels.
Yeah, Dietrich met to switch. For all the criticisms of him, the one thing you cannot deny about him is that he loved motorsport. And he was prepared to lose money in motorsport across the board because he loved it so much. He's now dead. And like I said, that side of the company is now run by Oliver Mintzlaff. He is a football guy. He's much more inclined to look at the figures and make tough and hard decisions. And Red Bull clearly feels like it's not getting a return on their investment in MotoGP sponsorship, and they're scaling back. And this is a team
they're about to lose Marc Marquez.
Yeah, a Marc Marquez who has to break off his personal deal because Ducati is backed by Monster. So when you figure all of that in mind, this is a KTM package that's going to have Pedro Acosta, Brad Binder, Maverick Vinales, and Enea Bastianini on it next year. Three of the
That is a 4-rider death lineup if you've ever heard it. And yet, in the face of all of that, all of their financial stability is collapsing underneath them.
Yeah, I really hope this doesn't have a huge knock-on effect on their MotoGP team, because MotoGP has celebrated a golden era of whereas 2 years ago we had 6 manufacturers in the sport. Now we're down to 5. We could be down to 4, and Dorna's made it very hard for BMW to come back. And I didn't even mention this in the list, but I'm going to mention it anyway. We didn't mention it enough. Congrats to Toprak Razgatioglu, double World Superbike champion.
Him.
Despite him suffering an injury that he never should have.
2-time World Superbike champion, 17 wins on the year, dominated proceedings all the way through, beat Nicolo Bulega and Navarro Bautista, the 2 factory Ducati riders in the end. A lot of rumors he may still try and have one last push for MotoGP in 2026, to which I say good luck with that, buddy.
Oh, here he goes.
It would be very possible if BMW could get in. And BMW has been told by Dorna, buy a team or go away.
Yeah, because Dorna
everything has to be Formula One.
Because if in case you didn't see it already, or maybe we missed it when we talked about it initially, Dorna has pulled the grid slots that they were reserving for another manufacturer when Suzuki left the sport in 2022. The rumor was that they were always going to save them, and they offered them up to BMW saying, hey, if you can put a bike together, we'll give you the slots to get you on the grid. And BMW and ahed about it, and Dorna's like, actually, on second thought, we'll take that back. No, you can't join the grid right away. Sorry about that.
Who bought MotoGP right before they said that?
Liberty Media.
Doesn't ring a bell.
No. Yeah, it wouldn't be like they're trying to run the same franchise model that they're trying to install in Formula One right now as well, would it?
Crazy.
You know what else is crazy? Andrea Iannone's coming back. But first, let's wind back.
Ian is back.
Let's rewind it a bit, because Fabio Gianantonio is needing surgery. So what he's going to do is he's going to race the Thai Grand Prix this weekend, and then he's going to take the rest of the year off. He's out of title contention anyway. Why not rest up and get ready for the postseason Valencia test and start 2025 on the right foot? There are many candidates that step forward. I didn't think Andrea Iannone was going to be one of them. I'm going to be real. I thought his time in MotoGP was done after that failed doping test.
So did I. And to be fair, I can't say I was massively surprised, because when there was rumors about whether Pramac was going to drop Ducati or not earlier on in the year, their team boss openly said, we're considering Andrea Iannone for the seat. He loves Andrea. And look, Andrea's not been bad. He won a race in World Superbikes this year. He was second out of all the independent riders in the championship this year behind Danilo Petrucci. Petrux won the independent title. Go Petrux, we love you. We love that for him. But Iannone is back. He'll be riding the VR46 Ducati, replacing Di Gianantonio, who needs total reconstruction of his shoulder, apparently. Which
is that good?
Generally not great. I mean, it's the first time he's ever missed time in his Grand Prix career, but it's because the whole shoulder needs to be reconstructed properly, and you can't really do that while racing a motorcycle. Yeah, it's a horrible sentence, and that's why he's ending his championship 2 rounds early. So get well soon, Digia. One of the genuinely good personalities on the grid. Iannone will be back on a MotoGP grid at least for a couple of races to end the year. Welcome back to the Maniac. What a time to be alive.
Help us all.
Everyone's like. Also, shout out to David Alonso, who won again in Moto 3 over there at Phillip Island. He pulled away at the end of the race. He was on the harder compound tyre. He didn't burn his tyres up. He pulled away from the chasing group at the end of the race. Made some history. His 11th win in Moto3 this season, which, by the way, is now ties the all-time lightweight class record. Only one man in history has ever won 11 lightweight races in a single season. Any guesses? Yes, that's right. It's Valentino Rossi from back in 1997. He also won 11 races when he won the 125cc world title. And I do love that David Alonso came out and celebrated by wearing bandages. This sounds weird. It's exactly what Valentino did when he won his 11th race of the season in Indonesia back in 1997. This kid's clever. I like him. It's terrifying. We might have another Acosta on our hands because on and off the track, he's a thinking man's rider. I like this kid. I like this kid a lot. It's terrifying. One more piece of news that we didn't talk about on the show. We probably should have done in hindsight, looking back on it. It's dropped today as a resolution, at least. That you might remember the name Carlos Tatay. He used to race in Moto3 and World Championship level. And sadly, his career came to an end over there. He was racing in the junior Moto2 category instead. And he suffered a horrible accident that effectively ended his career. Severely harmed his mobility from the waist down. He's been basically recouping from that injury ever since. Unfortunately, he's not had financial support from the FIM ever since, and he's had to be very vocal in telling the world about his story and his struggles. I'll give him his credit. Simon Patterson over at the race has done a very good job promoting his story and getting it out there for the world to hear and listen. And Carlos kind of had enough in the last week where he called out Jorge Vergas, the president of the FIM, directly, and the institution at large for not providing him with the financial backing to help with his recovery. Because those who don't know, if you race in an FIM championship of any kind, you have insurance. You're backed with an insurance policy to support you in the event of an injury. And unfortunately, the relationship the FIM had with their insurance provider, something got lost in translation because the insurance provider's not paid out. Finally, we got the news today after Tatay made some angry videos on Instagram calling out the FIM that they said, no, we stand by Carlos Tatay. We're going to pay him his money regardless of what the insurance provider decides in the end. So I'm glad there's been a resolution to this story, but it's all just sloppy, and it's a very stark reminder of how slapdash the FIM can be, and the fact that we had a severely injured rider not get financial backing to help him improve the quality of his life. He couldn't even afford a wheelchair, guys. That's how bad this had gotten. I'm
going to be honest with you. Until you just said that, I had forgotten about this. It was a horrible situation.
Because ultimately, we're talking about a rider that doesn't race on the MotoGP ladder anymore. Not really. I mean, we're talking junior Moto2. It's second division stuff. As much as I don't like to talk down other series, but that's the reality of the ladder.
It's not in the spotlight the way that the top class is. No,
and again, I praise Simon because he was the one who was able to get his full story out in the race earlier this year, and it was horrifying to read. Go out of your way to find it if you haven't already. It's a long post. It's not an easy read, I promise you. That's not to scare anybody off. That's just the reality of dealing with severe injury in this sport. And more people need to know the story, and more people need to hold the FIM to account, because they have a duty of care to support the people that risk their lives to take part in this sport indirectly for our own entertainment, quite frankly. And I'm glad that there's been a resolution here, but it should never have gotten to this point where you're relying on the world's press and calling out major series directly on social media to get a reaction to something that should be foolproof. It should be you get hurt, you get money, you get support, and unfortunately, this did not happen in this case. And it's been a good year now, I think, since this started up, and it sucks that it took this long for this to be resolved. And all I can say is I just wish Carlos the best quality of life he possibly can have, because it's a horrifying story, and it's another. I wish I didn't have to keep talking negative of bike racing where I can, but unfortunately there are still many holes in how it's run as an overall series, and it could be doing so much better than what it is, and that's where we're at, unfortunately.
We'll disagree. Dre, what do we got coming up next week on the pod?
On the podcast next week, we have Formula One in Mexico. It's the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend. Possibly a critical championship round for Lando Norris. He's 57 points back with 5 to go. Needs a big result this weekend. It's going his way so far. As we record this on Friday night, Max Verstappen only 19 laps of running across practice with some power unit issues. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out on the rest of his weekend. But it's not been great for Max so far. Lando Norris, McLaren's going all out. They've given him a brand new floor to play with, so this could be McLaren's last roll of the dice in terms of the championship battle if they want to try and win both crowns. Well,
remember, if Max has already taken an additional engine, if he needs to take one here, that's a grid drop, and I can't think of a worse place for the remainder of the year to take one, because you cannot pass at Mexico.
And they've actually taken 75 meters off the DRS zone.
Whose idea was that?
Great, we're going now.
Go from seven passes in the race to 3.
Yeah, great thinking, guys. I don't know how they watched Mexico last year and thought, you know what we need?
Too easy to pass.
Less overtakes. I don't even know.
We love motorsport here.
Also, keep an eye on McLaren. They've also submitted a right to review into what happened with Austin in the penalty. I don't think anything will come of it, but hey, what I'll do is post-production, Dre will add an audio note if something changes between now and the time this actually goes out. But that's happening this weekend, and of course, MotoGP is racing in one of my favorite places on the calendar, Buriram, the Chang International Circuit in Buriram for the Thailand Grand Prix this weekend. Critical round for Jorge Martin and Francesco Bagnaia this weekend. As mentioned, Marc Marquez fastest in timed practice at the end of Friday's running. Do check it out as well. We'll be talking about both of those races next week. And until then, though, I've been Dre Harrison. They've been RJ O'Connell and Cameron Buckley. Thank you very much for listening. And next week will be a good one. Until then, sayonara.
Later, y'all.
Dread it. Run from it. The bozo gene still arrives.
Get ready for the Nets battle.